Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
So good, so good, so good.
Easter deals starting at just $25 are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means tons of fresh reasons to rack.
They've got the best gifts.
Because I always find something amazing.
Save on Easter finds from Kate Spade New York, Calvin Klein, MAC Cosmetics, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbif Rugby Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby, the top 14 Pro de National, Les Bleus, the national team in the Six Nations, the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup, towns, cities, bars, restaurants, food, people, fans, stadiums, stadia, everything that makes French rugby so brilliant. I'm as ever joined by Rob. Rob, what's news? You are decked out in a bit of Montauban gear, bit of kit. I think we've decided is probably one of the more premium items, the Adidas 3 stripes.
Yeah, and the Po hat. I'm wearing green today because I was off green all of yesterday, and a fat load of good that did me and Scotland. Yeah.
Just
anyway, there was noise in the week about Scotland being arrogant. I was like, I saw something, and I very nearly commented, and I was like, I'm just not going to bother. But it was like, Scotland are not arrogant. Like, I've had 33 years of being a Scotland fan. There is absolutely nothing to be arrogant about being a Scotland fan. Also, people are like, "Oh, you're a plastic jock," like trying to be different, trying to be Scottish. No one would ever choose to be a Scotland rugby fan. Like, there is just the heartbreak and the false dawns are just never ending. They are so perennial that there's no way you would choose it. But some of it's a given.
That was some insipid stuff, particularly the first half an hour.
Well, we'll move on to the Six Nations and France in a bit, but like, Ireland was seriously bloody good.
They were. Scotland were pretty useless, though, I thought, first 20 minutes in particular, but that's not our domain. We'll move on. It was, of course, the big one in the Rosbif calendar, the weekend of Le Crunch, and somewhere in one of the great facilities, the great stadia south of the Thames, our correspondent was there. It was Rob in the stands for the Strictly Come Dancing live tour, bringing you cutting edge analysis from the edge. How was it?
It was great fun. I really enjoyed it. Just full disclosure, I wasn't dragged along like many others. I was actually bought it as a birthday present by my girlfriend, and I was delighted. It was a gift I was delighted to receive, and I really enjoyed it. It was terrible timing in terms of clashing with the rugby, and it meant we couldn't do anything special for the Le Crunch. But it was quite amusing being in the One Sports in like their Nicholson's pub in the O2, which was absolutely heaving, quite a weird crowd, and it just cleared. Like, as soon as the final whistle went, it just cleared out, and people was like, "Oh, time for Strictly." We genuinely heard like multiple people say, "Time for Strictly now."
Incredible.
One bloke who I was chatting to sporadically throughout the game is like, "Oh, we're off to Strictly now," and yeah, it's our guilty pleasure, and people at work can't believe that I watch it, but yeah, I love it.
Surely everyone is there to go and watch the show afterwards. They haven't nipped down to the Nicholsons in the O2 as their like local for.
Mate, it's heaving though. You'd be surprised how I thought there might have been a few people like dragged, because there's quite a lot of shopping there. Thought there might have been a few other halves dragged along for shopping. There was definitely a few other halves who had slunk off early from the shopping to watch it, and then kind of their other halves or mum kind of joined halfway through the first half. But yeah, interesting crowd. But I was able to watch it. I missed the first 15 minutes. I think a burger. But how about you? Where did you watch it?
Needs must. I watched it with a couple of mates of ours. The one of our friends has just moved slightly to the burbs, so we watched it near there in a brewery, actually, following what was supposed to be a short scenic walk, and it was pissing down and was referred to at points as like a cross between the Somme and Chernobyl. The conditions underfoot, I mean, probably over-egging it ever so slightly, but the conditions underfoot en route to said brewery were not amazing. I think the racing terminology would be soft. Is that the worst? When it's basically
heavy is heavy.
Right. Well, it would be somewhere in there. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a thoroughbred.
Genuinely, where were you? I'm trying to work out which friend you're talking about.
Oxted.
Oh, you were in Oxted. Didn't you see Chris Robshaw?
No. That was another walk, I believe. Yeah, shout out Joe, who's moved out of London, as just fully embracing country life in whatever way it comes about. But yeah, let's get into it. Twickenham, England prevailed 26-25. It doesn't really tell the full story. Initial thoughts before we unpick a few little elements of it.
I think my kind of initial thoughts, or my thoughts Saturday evening, were an element of the other games that I've had. This are the 2019 World Cup final, and I can't think of any, like maybe the second or third Lions test for South Africa, the COVID one, where the better team, like the worst team, has had this heroic victory, and the better team is just consigned to just a loss. There's just a weird empty feeling. I was genuinely pretty neutral. Like, when there was a half break, I was shouting "Go on!" whichever team it was. Like, I just wanted to see good quality rugby, and we didn't really get that. But I just felt a little bit empty in terms of kind of. It just felt a very unsatisfactory result for a neutral.
Interesting.
How did you feel about it?
Well, I thought it was imperfect, but that made it pretty thrilling, and I thought it was engrossing.
I thought it was a great game
throughout. Obviously, with my original Rosbif hat on, delighted that England prevailed. So it's a funny one, isn't it? I think as ever, the initial reactions are probably far more extreme than they need to be. I think France at points, I mean, they were wasteful, they were inaccurate when it mattered. They were also at points, I thought, pretty exceptional until the kind of final ball and the final moment, belying conditions that were clearly not easy to play in, or at least play the way that they ended up playing in. And I thought large parts of the French game were really solid. But there is a bit of there's that as the kind of high line staid observation. I think that the English fan hat I found some of the boorishness around how poor English rugby in general is in recent times slightly frustrating, and therefore it's been, it's quite nice to have a big showpiece win against a really good side. And the flip side of that is that France, again, in a pretty big game when it really matters, have just not been able to come out on the right side of things. And there's a lingering feeling, I would suggest, which is probably being echoed in parts of the French media across the channel, that this team are slightly underperforming and slightly underwhelming given the resources and the talent at hand. But I really enjoyed the whole thing.
I'd like to say that I said last week during our podcast, I said on our previews, and I've said on multiple WhatsApp groups, that I think England had a game in them, and I thought they might win. In fact, I thought they were going to win. Not might. I'm making it more conclusive than that. I said they were going to win because they have a game in them. They've still got quality players. I think it's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because yes, I also think some of the English kind of downing of English rugby has been a little bit overblown, but that game could have easily been 40 points to 10 final score.
Yeah, 100%.
And should have been, because those chances that they had were all in the first 20 minutes. If France are 28-0 up after 20, 25 minutes, they're off and into the distance then. There's no way England are coming back from that. And
agreed.
I think that could have been another complete humiliation. I remember you said a couple of weeks ago that 53-10 could have been 100, but it was really bad conditions. I guess that on Saturday was the kind of, the flip side of when literally nothing sticks. And it costs them. It's weird to see. So like they are world class players, like Dupont aside, but like Peno, Ramos, BLBRA are 3 of the best players in the world right now, and they all made mistakes at times. It's just, it's a tough. It's mind blowing to have 4 world class players all make glaring mistakes all in the same half is rare,
and all in
really
try scoring positions as well.
Yeah.
It's not, they weren't sort of, unusual to have so many errors of the same ilk and in the same positions on the pitch, as opposed to, maybe someone is a bit scrappy under a high ball or misses a really obvious one-on-one tackle. It was just purely, it is a tricky one as well, because you can't really legislate for that sort of thing. Like, how do you, what's the tactical point? What's the coaching point? There isn't one. It's just catch the ball. Where would, maybe then from a France perspective, where would you start with some of the take the positives? Where are some of the positives in this? Because I think there are some which I'll keep to myself for the time being, because a lot of what they did was good, and it was killer moments that absolutely crucified them.
I don't have loads of things that were really, really good, to be honest.
Okay.
Thought Boudon was really good again. I thought Miafu was pretty good. One of his better international games that we've seen of him. He's certainly quite prominent. You're right, though. He does a lot of walking at the right times, doesn't he? He kind of... I think Dzeko off the bench was really good.
He was, yeah. He was.
I think the player of the match was always, once the tries had happened, it was always going to be Finn Smith. But the best player on the pitch was Tom Curry. And Ben Earl was pretty good, and Tom Willis when he was on was pretty good, and Ben Curry was pretty good. But when Dzeko came on, that was kind of the first time that they had a version of Tom Curry in a way, like someone with that energy and dynamism. And it's actually him that makes the tackle on Tom Curry, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind of try saving, and it's straight up. He is literally it's like a trampoline, bounces up. I thought, we've been calling for a Gazzotti or a Castro Ferreira or a Nucci for a bit of dynamism, and Boudon has added that. I think we kind of said in our previews on X that quietly he is the key man in that back row, and he has added edge and spite. But I think they still need a bit of energy. It's a weird one, because I think individually Aldrit, Cross, and Boudon all played really well. So it's quite hard to be like they were lacking this XYZ, because actually they were all pretty good. They were 3 of France's better players, I thought.
Yeah, they're all decent enough. I think it was just on that day in those conditions, that slightly more dogged, aggressive maybe isn't the word, but dogged, energetic back row with the makeup of Curry and Earl just shaded it and was going to. And I think you're right with Dzeko. He brought almost like a bit of desperation that I think energy and a bit of just want to do things slightly differently. Like he carried quite hard. He flew into a few rucks, and frankly, the rest of the French bench was pretty passive across the park, I thought, and he was the only one that really brought that. One thing I will say is I thought, and I'm sure he's copping plenty of heat just because of the nature of the result, but I actually thought a lot of France's back play looked quite good, at least to start with, before the final ball, with Mathieu Jalibert really often playing in that second playmaker role, with Ramos kind of slotting in at 10. There were a couple of glimmers in the first half, and then actually I think it might have even been the first play. Half. There's that lovely move where Barassi goes through the middle, and I actually thought Yoram Murfana had quite a good game as well. It was just
I think that's the best game I've seen from Murfana for a couple of years in a France jersey. It was much more
when it was difficult.
Yeah, exactly, and it's much more like the player we see with Bordeaux. That's kind of a bits and pieces everywhere at the right time, link man, just doing good things in good places, and it's not. Kind of like Fiku has built a career on, really. And I kind of realised early on last season when Bordeaux started to hit some form that I see it now. I see why Moefana is getting picked, because he is actually quite similar to Biku in the just link. It's a link man in the centres really. But yeah, you're right. He stepped up, and I thought the relationship with Jalabert worked really well with him, because they kind of went when they kind of attacked. They kind of attacked together, and they were on the same page, which they weren't with Barassi, I don't think, really.
Yeah.
But I thought it's interesting because we know that Ntamack has a 3-week ban, which incorporates 2 rounds of top 14 fixtures and Saturday. So,
well, supposedly, as of this evening, the independent mystery judicial committee have ruled that basically he would have been one of the protected players, and therefore this round of top 14 doesn't count, and therefore he should be missing Italy as well, is my understanding, having scoured a few avenues this evening.
Interesting. Well,
which in principle I agree with, but whether there's consistency there, I don't know, because there's no way he would ordinarily be released back to Toulouse.
I mean, we've seen it so many times with we saw it a few times with like Farrell and that, didn't we?
Oh, 100%, yeah. Apparently he was going to rock up against Bedford in the Premier Cup, but no.
I think Sonny Bill Williams in the Lions tour, when he got that red card, I think they organised like New Zealand North Island B versus North Island C. And
Dads v Lads.
It was like a game of 3 halves sort of thing. And it was going to count for like 2 of Sonny Bill Williams' like games. It was like, right, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I felt like in that game, Jalabert was we kind of previewed it as it's now or never. But actually, I kind of think like he kind of couldn't win from that.
Yeah, agreed.
I think for him to have kept his place, okay, now he might keep his place for Italy. He basically had to score like 40 points single-handedly for him to keep his place.
Yeah.
Because there's been so much furore around him and Gautier, and the kind of favoured son is clearly Roman Ntamack. I feel quite sorry for him, because I think he had quite a muted game. You know, he was he
was quite quietly effective.
He was quietly effective.
Watching it back, he was at the centre of a lot of the good that came from France.
Yeah, but I wonder. I agree with you completely. I thought he was kind of quietly effective, but we're so not used to that version of Mathieu Jalabert. You know, it's almost like he played within himself, because he was afraid of expressing himself too much, because he knew he'd get pilloried in the press or get dropped or whatever. But I agree with you. I thought he was really good. He was like an 8 out of 10 from him, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. I think he was generally made good decisions. Again, and it was watching it back, I was like, I'm not quite sure what sort of a game he's had, and then watching it back, I was like, no, he seems really controlled.
He couldn't have done much else.
No, I completely agree. And I really liked how it him and Ramos kind of interchanged into that first receiver role. It was just gave them some nice shape.
You mentioned there were quite a few good things that you saw from France, and I kind of struggled.
Well, I think that was, to be honest, that was the 3 things that are kind of, I guess, all linked. Because I thought their midfield and attack was generally pretty good and showed a little bit more cohesion than it has done. Barassi was maybe a little bit quieter, but I thought Moefana was good, and Barassi took his kind of chances when he had a little bit of space. I thought the line out, having been pretty ropey, was quite solid.
And especially on defence as well.
Defensively, very good. I mean, England were a little bit iffy, but Rumat, who had a bit of a tough game, but is excellent, isn't he?
He's had a poor game.
Excellent at the line out.
Yeah.
So those were the main things, and I still think they showed it seems so silly, because they were so wasteful, and the final ball went missing or was dropped, but some of their attacking rugby was still absolutely exceptional. Like the last try, the LBRA, the way, the kind of the pont hold, the break, the chip. Penno then does his best to absolutely stuff it by not giving a really easy ball, but it's it was outstanding. And the thing that we want to go on to the negatives. There's a few things that stuffed them, not least not being able to catch, but they call up the restart, the third set piece, didn't they? And I think they lost a third of them.
Two.
And, well, certainly the first one was a try pretty soon afterwards. It was just little bits like that which were which were pretty brutal.
Well, and then the second one was the one that from that final try. So they basically, England basically got the ball back from that, and then they obviously kind of scored. On that, I think the final penalty is a wrong decision. The one that
the turnover, the Benal.
Yeah, I think there's no release at all. But
maybe
I think it's one of those things like home crowd, opposition 22, desperation. You go with it just kind of goes that way. Garrick was completely, he didn't do anything again. Well, at least he didn't do anything bad this time, but kind of a weird.
It seemed an odd decision, I think, to bring him. I know we've got on here what next and what they do. Maybe that's a good point to start. I do think the whole dynamic with the bench feels a bit off to me, and it sounds ridiculous because he is the best player in the world. Dupont, the kind of insistence that he always plays 80, it makes it almost. I feel like it almost makes the position of someone like Le Garrick like redundant. It kind of, I don't. The timing to bring off Jalibert and push Dupont out didn't. Easy to say with hindsight, but it didn't work for me.
But at the time, I was like, I feel like that's a bit of a shame for Jalibert. I don't think that feels a bit weird.
That's what I mean. I don't think it was. It seemed that sort of Steve Borthwick's had a lot of cop a lot of coaches now. I think that it feels like there's a real trend. These kind of predefined substitutes people are clocking on, and it did feel a bit that way.
I think just that it's an interesting point you made there about Dupont playing 80 because he is now kind of universally the best player in the world. Whereas I think in the Grand Slam year, he was the best player in that team. He wasn't yet the kind of global, this guy is a god type level. And you would see, I mean, it's not much, but you would see Lukaku on for like 5-10 minutes in a game at the Millennium Stadium or whatever. It's an interesting point. I think the balance of the bench is completely off because you just don't need. I know he didn't play particularly well either. He was all right at line-out time, but you just don't need Oradu. If you're bringing on Guillard and you've got Jegu, you just don't need Oradu. Yeah. And they could have really benefited from, I don't know, something different in that back line maybe. I know they didn't even bring Gaetan on, which is a shame. But
like a
Makalu, mate.
Well,
he's the answer.
But you say it, but I'm completely with you. Like there is no way that isn't a better option, or I don't know, someone who could offer something, completely different position, but maybe it's a Villiers or someone like that who in a dogged game can provide that bit of off his wing aggro, one out little punches. Yeah, it just I think both the game against Wales and this one, we both genuinely felt not lots of them, but a couple of the selections are a little bit weird, and I do think the Oradu one and the bench isn't quite working for me.
I think my main point on kind of what next for France is they don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Like they lost by 1 point in the last play of the game, and you cannot legislate for. My exact notes are: you can't legislate for that amount of drop balls from world-class players, which is basically what you said, amazingly. But it's true. Like Penaud dropped 2, BLBRA dropped 2, Aldrip dropped 1, Dupont dropped 1. That is, it's not only like a bad drop for him; it's a bad drop for I don't know, Danny Kerr or Ben Spencer,
Dolly in cricketing parlance.
Yeah, and they could have completely blown them away. I saw a quote today from because one that I thought might get jettisoned after or might get rotated out would be Piatto Malvaca, because he had a bit of a mixed bag. Like I'm a big Malvaca fan, but he has flattered to deceive recently in both Toulouse and French colours. But he had a pretty good game in some bits. I thought the underarm line out throw, kind of like that's cool. Kind of like when you
corridor cricket.
Yeah, exactly. Or like you're kind of catching in a circle and you kind of throw the one. It was mate. I love that. But then he kind of had that. He got away with the one, the kind of what would have been one of the more outrageous offloads.
The one that he put on the deck.
Yeah, he literally dropped it on the floor. But he said, it's not me if I don't try, which I quite like. I think that's the right mindset. I don't think they go. There's a chance now that they kind of go, oh well, the attack's not right, or there's this, and this wrong. But it's not. I think they've got a few problems. The balance of the bench. They need to change their reserve tight head, and they need to sort out what they're doing with with kind of the scrum half, fly half replacements really, and what their game plan is. I think they've got to go back to 5-3, and they've got to change or bring a more dynamic back row in there, or do 6-2, but have like a ball carrier alongside Jegu, and they've got to bring in Tatafu as their tight head reserve. I think. Because he's getting
poor
dusted
old
every time.
Georges Henry, he's looks completely beleaguered every time he's on a pitch. I think I don't know, from afar he strikes me as the old kind of cliche, like a confidence player, and he looks like he has no confidence at all. Needs some more gastro. He was great in that New Zealand game, certainly in the loose. Bit of gastroenteritis to get him going.
Great in the loose. Jean-Baptiste Gros yet again.
What a guy!
And the scrum time. What a player!
He has been superb. He really has been. We loved. Obviously, the headline was him popping up out of nowhere to dot the ball down behind his own line. I also saw a picture of him, not a picture, a video that the French team put out of him on the Eurostar, and he was opposite Guillard, and they both were wearing a very fine line of wire rim specs, and Gross pulled it off very well.
Both very good looking men. Like for a prop, I think Jean-Baptiste Gros he's got a bit about him.
He's got an aura,
despite the fact he's 25 and looks 35. But
he's multi-dimensional. Yeah, he's been fantastic.
But I wouldn't change that much. I don't think I've got that much. Ramos was poor, but that's the worst game I've seen Ramos play for a long time. I thought he ran down some blind alleys, shoveled on a bit of shit.
It's kind of like the old cliche of Thomas Ramos that never really was, but
the kind of 2018 version of Thomas Ramos. Yeah,
but I'm with you. I don't think a huge amount needs to change. I think obviously they've got to go to Rome in a couple of weeks, and thereafter it's Ireland, which is fascinating and become. I mean, Ireland are looking pretty insurmountable at the moment, but it's a huge opportunity for that French team to right a few wrongs.
It's like 3-4 weeks away. A lot can change. Player I just thought of that might be quite useful for them to have back is actually who could come back is Jonathan Dante.
Is he fit?
I think he could be in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah,
Dante or Fiku, you could probably they've missed the experience of Dante and Fiku. That's the issue. Talking of that, we had some bingo happen. Do you know what the pack difference was? The weight, the difference of the pack.
It wasn't that much. It was
11 kilos.
Yeah.
And yet we had a lot of that big French pack. Ben Kaiser are those big French boys. It's like they're not that much bigger than their opposition. I think Will Stewart is like deceptively enormous.
He's massive, isn't he? Yeah.
We also had Francois Cross doesn't seek the cameras, but does the horrible work beautifully from Nick Mullins, which was exactly the sort of thing we're looking for. I was convinced because we took Piatto Malvacaras from Wallace and Fortuna. We took that off, and I was convinced. I thought we were going to get it from Nick Mullins because you're. I know not Piatto Malvaca. You're a Mofana because he was quite prominent. I thought we were going to get that one, and we'd taken it off. But
shame. Yeah, it was good comeback after quite a quiet week of initial first round bingo. A couple of slightly more punchy. The dabbers are at the ready. Alrighty, shall we leave that there? We'll look forward to Italy in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, Rob, I believe you had your eye on the under-20s, as did I, but not very keenly, I'll be honest with you. It was background watching, but what were your thoughts? It wasn't the most gripping.
No, it was a tough watch, to be honest. Yeah, it was quite like in hindsight now, thinking back on it, it was quite similar to the game the next day, or France anyway. Their execution was they were just so sloppy, and they looked so good the week before and so slick and all in sync and just unbelievable natural rugby players the week before, and they just looked all out of sorts on Friday night. They just weren't very good, and I don't England were pretty good, but they weren't amazing.
Conditions were
slipperier
than Twickenham, I think, weren't they? It did look greasy,
and also it's Bath, which can get pretty muddy underfoot. The player Elijah Ibsayen, who is quite a flair bloke, number 8. He's sort of player, and I kind of reserved my judgment on him last week because he's the sort of player that, because he's kind of got a big fro and he's big bloke, you kind of think, and he just looks like a bit of a baller. You kind of think, oh, he's just sucked me in with kind of his appearance, and he might not actually be that good. But actually, he was the best player for France by an absolute mile. Like, he was kind of a 9 out of 10 and everyone else was 5. And then Browbury, who I think is a serious player. I think he was probably a 6 or a 7. But yeah, Ibsayen, number 8 from Bordeaux, pretty useful addition to that already pretty stacked back 5 of the scrum they've got down in Bordeaux. That's not much. There's not much else to say other than Oliver Cowie's grandparents. His grandmother is a Bath season ticket holder.
Oh, really?
And it was quite funny because it kind of seemed like he'd been picked to speak English. Like, he was kind of basically the kind of translator at every point. And at one point, he's like got perfect English. His parents are English, but when I say perfect, like on the ref mic, I thought, because it wasn't on screen, and I thought it was an England player talking to the ref. And then I realised it was actually Oliver Cowie. And he cut a very nice line as well. He's obviously a very good rugby player. He started for Toulon he was on the bench for Toulon, wasn't he? Against Bordeaux. And that's a pretty good start. But yeah, there was a pretty nasty looking injury for Diego Jord, but he walked off. It got pretty spicy towards the end. There was we got the C-bomb quite audibly on the ref mic. And the ref even had a word with the player afterwards, say, "You're on live TV," which I quite enjoyed. But there was a lot of effing and jeffing.
I did hear the England cat. There was like, what was it? I think the ref said to, is it Burrow, the England captain?
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, you've got to have a word with your players." He just turned around and went like, "Cut the fucking chat," or something like that.
I thought Nick Heath on commentary was great, actually.
Yeah.
Although he did he did keep referring to Liam Akrab as Akram, so he's obviously now got a nickname for us of Wazim.
Wazim Akrab.
Yeah, that's all I've got to say. France were pretty rubbish.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
Browbury, Gaeton are going to be a top 14 winning combo at Po, possibly never, but within 5 years.
Who knows? Alrighty, just before we part, I'm going to give you one. You mentioned their number 8 at Bordeaux, England starter this weekend. Tom Willis had a season in the top 14 a couple of years ago. Did a great job after Wasp's demise at the back of the scrum there. He played in the top 14 semi-final that year. Do you know there's another Englishman on the bench?
For Bordeaux, Gabriel Ogre.
Gabriel Ogre. Unbelievable. That completely slipped me. Gabriel Ogre was a top 14 semi-finalist. Good on him.
I've got a similar bit of trivia for you on this under-20s game.
Oh, God.
Two players played against each other already this season in the Champions Cup.
Oh, wow. The Van Centre, Robin...
No, Champions Cup.
In the Champions Cup?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
The England player's easy because he was basically man of the match. Yeah.
So who did they play? Did they play
minutes.
Cast?
No, it's a player you've called out before, the loosehead at Stade Francais. Coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Who actually wasn't very good. I'd expect a guy that's played that much top 14 rugby at loosehead to be quite good.
A little bit more dominant, yeah. Oh.
Although Billy Seller at tight head's quite good for England.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, they've actually played against each other. That's quite a nice touch.
Lovely stuff. Right, we'll part the international stuff there. Back in a moment for a bit of domestic.
Life is made up of many gorgeous moments. Cherish them all, big and small, with Blue Nile. Whether it's for yourself or a loved one, Blue Nile's unrivaled selection of expertly crafted fine jewelry and statement pieces help make all your moments sparkle. Blue Nile's experts are on hand to guide you, and their diamond guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Celebrate a life well lived in the most radiant way and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan.
It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE-certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Action. After a brief international hiatus, the top 14 is back this weekend. Some really, really intriguing fixtures. Before we get into that, Rob, doublons, for any new listeners, talk us through what it is, what it means, why it's possibly quite good fun.
It's the way that we can show that we really know our rugby by knowing the fancy word that the French have for games on during the international period. They call them the doublons, I think, because it's something to do with double. So it's like there's two matches going on basically. But even though there's not international games this weekend, this would count as a doublon because there are players missing for the international squad. And what that means, so it is quite well aligned now in France. So they not only do for every player in the squad, do clubs get an extra bit of salary cap, which is the same as England. You get like England credits. You also get for every player that's in the away with a France squad, you get an extra GIF place. So, or rather, you get an extra non-GIF place. So you can still, Toulouse, for example, they will have call it five. I think they've probably got more. They've called it 5 players staying with the national squad this weekend. They would then be able to, in theory, pick 5 more non-GIFs for their match day squad, and it not count towards their non-GIF quota. So you could have a whole starting 15 almost of kind of international players that are not GIF qualified, and you could, if you're Toulouse, you could almost kind of come out net unpenalised. But it does make for some pretty interesting games. And obviously the Premiership and the URC don't really have that. I mean, the URC, when you've got Scotland and Italy in particular, when the internationals are on, there's just some of those games are just kind of completely farcical because they are a bit more spread out, and because of those credits in the top 14, you do get. I mean, Toulouse and La Rochelle and Bordeaux have got some pretty deep squads now because they've got those credits, and it affects different clubs in different ways. You do see certain clubs kind of come through at times like this. I'd say,
yeah.
Anything else to add on doublons, Rich?
No, I think that was beautifully explained and far more eruditely done so than I could have done. But looking ahead to this weekend, you're right. Like, I mean, this sort of doublon setup generally makes some interesting rounds, but I don't know. Maybe they're
the kind of rounds where they're like where the winners and losers are made almost. Like if you do well in this, you can really someone will come out of this weekend better or worse off because at the end of the season, because of how they've done over these next couple of weeks,
they've made ground during maybe against the side they might not have done in a standard week.
But for example, Poe's last away win in the top 14 was this time last year when they went away and won at Bordeaux, because Bordeaux didn't have a particularly weak side out, but they didn't have some of the stars because of the international break, or they were in the international squad. Do you want the list of players that have been retained before we dive into the fixtures?
Yeah, because a few played on Saturday have been not let go, but released back, haven't they?
Yes, quite a few have. The most notable one from the 23 is Emilien Gaeton. I think he might actually be the only one, because obviously he didn't play. Forwards, Aldrit, Antonio, Bai, Boudon, Cross, Gross, Jegu, Marchand, Malvaca, Miafu, Ruma.
So Oradou and Guillard from the 23 are back with their clubs.
Yes. Yeah. And the backs, Barassi, Bielbiere, Dupont, Jalibert, Legarec, Mofana, Peno, Ramos. So that is everyone apart from Emilien Gaeton.
Yeah. Okay.
Great news for Poe. We get 2 back. Yeah. We got 3 internationals back, and that's a good example, isn't it? Like we go away to Stade Francais, and Stade Francais aren't losing anyone at the moment. But for Po to have their three French international players is pretty key, and it does give them a chance at Sejong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe it's because there hasn't been any top 14 for a little while, but with the doublons, but mainly just the way the fixtures lie, the whole round looks pretty interesting, because I think you could make a case for pretty much any of the away sides being in games that they could win, which is, I mean, obviously any away side could win a game, but it doesn't happen that often. Whereas here, so you've got Toulouse, obviously, Sean have to travel to Clermont, Bordeaux, first game of the weekend, go to Bayonne, who have been flying.
And don't really lose anyone.
No, not at all.
And Tatafu would be back fit. And also, it's different to the Autumn International Six Nations, because it's certainly like Pro de Deux, they've been a load of clubs that are affected by kind of Rugby Europe Championship nations. Like there's so many Georgians and Portuguese in Pro de Deux. But the top 14 is kind of more affected in the Autumn Internationals, because you've got Argentinians and Fijians and Tongans, whereas you don't have that in the Six Nations. So someone like Bayonne, who over the Autumn Internationals lost kind of Taggy and Mangala and kind of guys like Bosch, maybe. Yeah. I think he might not have. Some of the
might be in the wider squad.
Who's the rapid bloke? Carreras, stuff, guys like that. Like, so they actually do. They've basically got a full squad to pick from, minus injuries. But whereas Bordeaux obviously lose quite a lot, and they'll lose Johnny Gray. Johnny Gray will still play, I think, won't he? Or
he'll be eligible, won't he?
Yeah.
Go on, give me the game for the weekend to keep an eye out on.
I think there's only one place to look, isn't there? Racing 92.
The Thunderdome.
The bottom of the table clash. Not quite. 12th versus 4th. Racing in their first game under Patrice Allardyce Colazzo at the Thunderdome, hosting Van, who I feel like I haven't seen or heard of Van for a long time.
No.
It feels like, because they're in the Challenge Cup, and I don't know, obviously they don't really have anyone in the France setup. It kind of, yeah. Feel like what have they been doing for the last 2 months?
They've been,
because a load of them didn't play in the Challenge Cup. Like, what's Mako Vinopola been doing? Eating.
They've been getting ready to storm the Thunderdome. Is that on? Well, it's not. What have we got? We've got obviously
Bayonne on TV. Po have got a couple of games lined up, I think.
Not this weekend. They haven't. It's Lyon La Rochelle in the middle slot, and then Montpellier Toulon. Some heavy lads going at it, and then of course Clermont-Toulon or Toulouse rather on Sunday night. But yeah, I'm with you. Racing need that new coach bounce, otherwise that suddenly looks very precarious. Yeah, we'll see.
Sorry, I've just noticed this is completely nothing to do with French rugby. Premier Sports this week are showing live Leinster Senior Schools Cup matches. That's quite flair.
Blackrock College versus St Michael's.
Jeez, I imagine that's quite a tasty game.
Yeah, anyway. I don't know much about that, but I know, don't all the Irish players go through Blackrock College? Basically, all the Leinster players.
Yeah, and I think St Michael's is pretty big as well. I think that might be like the other one in Leinster that's pretty big, like Carney and guys like that.
Fair.
But yeah, it's a shame that's the Lyon La Rochelle one. That doesn't excite me that much. Great opportunity for Lyon. Great opportunity.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Lyon, Bayonne, and Clermont stand to be the big winners of
very possibly
this round of fixtures, because of home games away to the three sides most affected. Like, we kind of made a point of the fact that 14 of the starting 15 came from 3 clubs on Saturday for France. So, and those 3 clubs are all away at places that they could quite feasibly lose, places with historically strong.
Should be a good one. There was no National last week. That'll be back this weekend, so we'll skirt over that for the time being. Pro de Deux was back, and it was genuinely interesting. Proper bang. 4 away wins, which rare. Even in this mad season, it's been rare.
I think I said to you when I sent you through the fixtures, it's like, I reckon this could be a record amount of away wins.
100%. It was.
I don't know if 4 out of the 8 is a record amount or not, but it certainly
can't be far away. Can't be far away.
I don't think we've ever had 5 out of 8. And it was like the nature of the away wins as well. It's not even like the predictable ones.
Oh, well, there's two madcap. Well, I guess Colombia have been going quite well, but Grenoble, really good win away from them. They're very efficient. Aurillac went to Nice. I thought Nice now or never got fairly dusted aside, which is a real shame for them. Do you want to talk about? Actually, we'll leave the early game maybe till last because it's truly ridiculous. Valence Roman beat Dax away, which is an amazing result because Dax really basically don't lose at home. And it was last play of the game off the back of the scrum, and the celebrations were brilliant. The end of this game, I saw the highlights. It looked like a team of school kids who had just found out they'd beaten like their local rivals, but there was no scoreboard, so they didn't actually know what the score was. It was just such a pure ecstasy, nothing fabricated. It was fabulous.
And also with that, it was actually quite a good try. Like, it's a really nicely finished try off the back of the scrum. But the standout player for Valence, who is now far and away the highest point scorer in the league, Lucas Meret, kicked absolutely everything, including the touchline conversion to deny Dax the bonus point, which was quite something because I've forgotten his name now, but the Dax fly half also slotted one from halfway to kind of nudge them into the lead, didn't he? Ramon Segui, that's it. But Valence were pretty good. Ryan Macaulay, Australian second row, scored. A bloke who we kind of had a brief conversation with someone about in Italy when we were there over Christmas, just before Christmas. But yes, that is a brilliant win. And it does mean, you mentioned Aurillac winning away at Nice. Nice are now 18 points off the barrage place. Poor old Valence are still in 15th, although they might, we'll come on to that. What other games did you see?
I saw a bit of the Grenoble game, and I saw a little bit. Well, I saw the game we'll come on to in just a moment, and I saw a couple of highlights from Provence's fairly convincing win against Nevers at home.
Provence, so some really good. Nevers scored one of the tries of the weekend with some of the most electric hands you will see from a very young backline, almost into I think only 2 players over the age of 23, or 2 players non-current espoirs. But the player who really impressed me for Provence was Leo Drouet, a guy who has impressed me a lot this season, but was playing at 15, normally plays on the wing, 21-year-old, as if France need another talented 21-year-old fullback. But he was involved in pretty much everything, certainly in all the tries. I feel like he scored a couple himself, and he has been, him and Adrien Lepeg, who's normally his kind of opposite winger, but obviously they linked up pretty well a couple of times in this. I think the interesting thing about that is also like Jules Soulon seems to be the man at 10 at the moment, who is kind of a bit of a journeyman. We've said in the past, he's done some ridiculously flair things this season, but he's keeping out Clisson and Gopperth from starting 10. And Arthur Coville, who's I think he's captain, but he's a bit of a stalwart there at 9. But they're looking really good. And it's not, even though they had Inga Finau and George North in the centres and Harrison at number 8, it's the kind of fringe guys that have been there a while, kind of coming through and clearly stepping up to the plate with big names around them. Yeah,
they're going really nicely. Oyonnax's great run ended away at Béziers. A fairly tight game, but we need to talk about.
Hang on, wait. Before we go on to it,
go on.
Very quickly,
I want to talk about the Saxby.
Our boys got dusted. Although there was at the end a try, Saxby scored, and it was chalked off for obstruction, which is pretty tenuous. And the guy
24-0 down away from home.
Like the guy is still able to kind of just about make a tackle, and that would have denied Brive the bonus points. Brive had only scored 3 tries, which would have been quite a good result. But Corentin Glenat, who was really good at 10 when we saw him, had missed a couple of tough kicks to at least prevent the nilling. He looks quite a lot like Jack Grealish. I think he was rocking a bit of a ponytail when we saw him. But But Brive, like they look like they mean business right from the start. Like from the kickoff, they bundled Saxby straight into touch with like Moroni and Laws just heavily involved. One of the all-time, but I want to talk about Montauban Argennes, the game I was at last year where Argennes snuck it in the last minute, and Jerome Bosviel, the experienced head at 10 for Montauban, kind of basically had a very, very
all-time
game.
meltdown, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Reese, who I was there with, became an instant Argennes fan because of the meltdown of Jerome Bosviel. But the revenge for Bosviel, he's actually been in really good form this season. The revenge was sweet because there was one. Ivan Rayak on the wing scored one of the great hat tricks in this game. The first try, you may have seen it. You can see it it's on certainly on the Pro Day Dirt Instagram account. Basically, it's like Montauban get a free kick kind of between the 10-meter line and the halfway line, and Jerome Bosviel sends up a high bomb, and for 95% of the path of this high bomb, it looks, you just like, why has he done that? He's just kicked it far too long. And then Frank Porteau just absolutely shits his nicks, like right at the last minute. It bounces, is a kind of a bit of a bouncing around all over the place, and Ivan Rayak dots it down. Ivan Rayak's second try is then an interception where Frank Porteau has gifted him another one by kind of dollying up a floaty pass to the outside. And then to get his hat trick just before half time, Montauban have got a driving maul off the back of line out. It's not really going anywhere. The back starts to come in, like one of the centres comes in. Ivan Rayak goes straight into it. There's no intention of pushing. He goes into the maul, fishes out the ball. So I'm having that. And just sneaks down the blind side for his try. One of the great all-time hat tricks,
like
I think.
The perfect, like the left foot, right foot header. The
the
maul steal, the dropped bomb and the intercept. Amazing. And and similarly farcical lines. So the first game of the weekend, Biarritz, who up until a few weeks ago have had an extremely proud home record this year, hadn't lost a game until they lost to Soyo Angoulême, contrived to lose 27-0 at home to, Mont-de-Marsan, who are surely the most unpredictable side in the league, appear to be able to turn it on and off, crucially, at will. But I did some proper badgering after this. I think by my incredibly non-exhaustive search that this is the first time a home side had been nilled since 2018, and it was Colomiers against Bayonne, and it was 6-0, which suggests conditions probably weren't amazing. There were a couple of Rouen a couple of years ago had a couple where they scored 3 at home. I think Carcassonne lost quite heavily, like 53 at home a few years back. But to get nilled at home, that is all is not right in the last few weeks down in the Basque Country, it would seem.
No, and I think, have you got anything else to say on the game?
No, well, there was, I think they put it as the try of the weekend, didn't they?
Yeah.
The Pro Day official page, which was magnificent.
With a Schistera, which are all the rage, and there's an inside ball and a barnstorming run from Ioane with one of the best surnames in Pro Day Dirt, Yashagashvili, who I think has played for Georgia, but he obviously wasn't playing this weekend. 24-year-old number 8. He actually had a pretty good game the previous week against Aurillac away, but him on the charge is quite a terrifying prospect. He's absolutely enormous, but the hands in that try are just, Mont-de-Marsan have been capable of that all season. And when they want to turn it on, it is quite electric. It's quite a good team, that Biarritz side. Like, there's a lot of good players in there.
They've had the week before, right? There's obviously been a pretty serious incident, which is, I think, today resulted in
Massavesi Dakawanga being released
after his massive attack, as it was so beautifully put. Yeah, which can't help when someone, rumor has it, bites someone else's face off, basically.
Yeah, apparently you could see almost his jawline in his face.
No, that's no
quite
good.
Weird. Obviously, on seeing Massavesi Dakawanga released, the instant thought is surely he'll go back to where he belongs and re-sign for Montpellier. It's quite funny. I love how when Hugo Royce got confirmed last week, just the top comment on Instagram was like, but he doesn't have a criminal record.
Beautifully done.
But the wheels are off there. The wheels are well and truly off, because to lose at home once is bad. To then have whatever happened in the bar in Anglet, which sounds pretty dark, and then lose, get nilled at home is.
And this is
bad.
also. I mean, they suddenly find themselves. Where are they?
They are joint second bottom.
Joint second bottom, having had a really good start to the year.
They were top at one point.
And also, well, they've had a 8-point deduction, was it?
5 point.
Was it 5 points? Which, in the grand scheme of I know, okay, it's only 5 points, but that 5 points would put them level 8th. In fact, they'd be
No, put them 11th.
I've got them as 12th here. Are we looking at the same thing? Wrong. And
yours still got the 5 points on it.
How many points have you got them on?
35.
Ah.
Have you got them on 40? Because they were on 40 when they got the deduction.
No, I've got them on 39. Some sort of bootleg table. But either way, that 5 points in a league like Pro Day Dirt is massive and adds kind of a extra level of amplification into just how, I don't know, it's not been a great month for them.
Well, it puts them level with that on the table I'm looking at anyway, with a points difference of 2 more than Valence Romans. They are ahead by 2 points on points difference over Valence Romans at 14th/15th. And have you seen the fixture this weekend?
They have got to go to. Tell me, I have
Romans.
seen Valence Romans, which looks large, doesn't it?
That is critical, and you wouldn't want to be Biarritz in that situation. It's a terrible time for them to get that game.
Nice travel to breathe. That could be a little bit lambs to the slaughter. 2 questions for you on this though. The exciting one for me, Stade Montois hosting Provence. That looks like it could be quite good fun on the Thursday night.
Yeah.
And to bookend it, could we see the first away win in the ill-fated Friday night fixture? Béziers go to Agen, who in fairness have played quite well at home this year, haven't they? Certainly recently.
Yeah.
Could that be?
It's a brave man to call it. We saw even the best away side in the league got pumped in the late Friday kickoff.
Yeah. God, no one's even really come close, have they?
I think there was maybe Grenoble someone at Grenoble. The game we watched in Limoges was 15-12, wasn't it?
Oh, that was Dax.
It was Dax, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I think Grenoble got quite close to Provence away, but
the 2 teams at Agen were 3 points off first game of the year. Anyway, digress. Pro Day Dirt wrapped. Shall we come back? Some Petit-Fours and a little digestif. Okay, Rob, away from the Six Nations, the top 14 Pro Day Dirt, what has been keeping you interested?
Plenty of transfer rumours, I have to say, this week.
Go on, hit me.
So quite a few extensions as well. So Toulon have extended contracts for Esteban Abadi, Danny Priso and Setariki Tuathuvu.
Very nice.
La Rochelle have extended for Oscar Jegu, which is interesting. Matisse Haddad and, I can't remember his first name, but Kadori, the loosehead prop. I think he is, or he's a prop. The one that keeps coming up is Martin Pajarello to Bordeaux. That seems to be absolutely everywhere, but not confirmed by anyone.
Interesting. Okay.
But that feels like quite a good fit because he could do with a starting role. Well, he's not going to get it ahead of Luku, but
no,
he might play a little bit more there than behind Kuyu at Lyon. Don't know.
I feel there are better fits.
Yeah. Albert Tuasui to Provence is a rumour, which is quite an interesting.
Very nice.
A guy, and I don't know if he's any good, but Carwin Tuapelotu from Scarlets has been signed, as I've got in my notes, by Paul as a medical joker. That's obviously a typo for Poe. Do you know anything about Tamati Tua?
Tamati Tua plays for Exeter. He came from the Brummies, and he has not been that great when I've seen him play for Exeter this year.
Rumoured to go to Toulon.
Oh, really? There we go.
And the big news is the big signing that's been confirmed, which I think you saw before I did. Former Scotland captain.
Yeah.
Future British and Irish Lion 2025. Jamie Ritchie to Perpignan. That's a cool signing.
It's a very cool signing. Very cool signing after he has a nice long extended break over the summer at the back of that. I do feel sorry. There's going to tell you what, there's a bit of a decide. There are going to be some good back rowers not on that plane to Australia.
Yeah.
One area of real
talking of
strength.
planes, there was a whole load of teams that, talking of planes to Australia, a whole load of teams qualified for the World Cup this weekend.
Yes, the Rugby Europe Championship.
Yeah, hopefully, well, Romania and Portugal. So Portugal kind of automatic qualification, pretty good. Romania still. Do you reckon, has Romania ever not qualified for the World Cup?
Yes, 2019, I think, is the only one they didn't qualify for.
Oh, is that the one where there was like the dodgy incident with Spain and there was like there was like an ineligible player and that they had an ineligible player or something?
It was Spain, wasn't it, who the last World Cup qualified, and then they had a player who was, I think, quite flagrantly not eligible.
Yeah, he'd basically been in Spain on holiday, like for a 3-week holiday. But I think before that, there was something around like a Romanian ref in the game.
Oh, there was
Spain, and it was like the most egregious decision against Spain, or like something like that, wasn't it?
No, there was.
That was the 2019 one because Russia ended up in the World Cup instead of them.
Maybe one for.
So Spain have finally made it. I think this is their first World Cup, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, which is awesome.
John
for
Merkler,
them.
John Zabauza, our man Kerman Orikachea.
Yeah,
all the boys would be tearing up. Spain have got some decent players, to be fair.
Coming force. I've just found an article, 2018, Spain blame Romanian referee for Rugby World Cup failure. It isn't just Spain who are the losers today. Coach Santiago Santos said, rugby is the loser. I feel like there is footage as well, and some of it is, remarkable. I feel like, I don't know.
It's like
we'll have to dig it out.
So some of those videos you see coming out of the UAE that are like of cricket videos of like blokes playing in black trainers that are like the guys like purposefully stopping in the middle of the pitch, and it's like, and then the blokes like they can't basically like almost like the two same ends of a magnet, like the stumps and the ball just seemingly never hitting, like they just can't run him out because they're on the take.
Yeah, happier times for Romania, for Spain rather.
Yeah. Have you got any others? I've got a couple of tiny bits.
Nothing too major. I had Carwin Tuipulotu on my list. I had a couple of slightly lighter-hearted bits. One of which is closely linked to last night's Super Bowl, where for the eagle-eyed amongst you, Kendrick Lamar was the not eagle-eyed. It was pretty well publicised.
Oh, I didn't spot him.
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Super Bowl halftime show with I think a few people. Scissor was one of them, and there's some footage today of that duo will be performing at La Défense Arena, and to promote it, we had Roman Taufifenua and Antoine Gilbert with Kendrick Lamar and Scissor Racing 92 jerseys on Instagram earlier, which I thought was quite cool.
Surely Sia Khaleesi will make a return for that. There's some celebs around. He'll pop up for a photo.
He would have been. And then there was one other. This was it. This was excellent. So, two superb players from my beloved cast have obviously made friends recently since Will Collier's side. So there was footage the other day at some sort of cast training base, I assume, of Will Collier and Santiago Arata out doing a bit of al fresco cookery, which was being done. I thought I'd send you this photo actually, but I'll send it through afterwards. Was being done on like a custom-made Castre Olympique sort of cast iron barbecue, which looked very cool. But more of note was the fact that you can see Will Collier sort of looks like he's hiding away while Santiago Arata is dipping these, I don't know what they are, some sort of friable good into a smouldering hot deep pan, deep frying these things, wearing a pair of goggles a la Fabien Galtier. And basically over like a big live fire and looking like he's about to blow the entire place to the ground. It looks
amazing.
It looks both quite good fun, delicious, and pretty reckless in equal measure. Look like they're having a grand old time on there.
Uruguayans, from watching Race Across the World, Uruguayans don't fuck about with their food and their meat. It looks pretty sensational. I can't really top that, but I've got a few things. Good news. I know they're seemingly getting hammered every week in Nacional, but the real rugby club, Carcaron-Le-Croix, who have reformed at the bottom of the pyramid. They won 105-3 away from home at US Saint-Mandrier this weekend.
Oh, brilliant.
So
not for US Saint-Mandrier.
Yeah, it's a tough day out, isn't it? Do you reckon it's like when London Welsh were at the bottom?
I was just literally about to say,
and knocking around that area, having a few days in the role of coach, is a player that played for Toulon, one of the best players of all time, in my view, the best inside centre of all time. Do you know who that is? Played for Toulon very briefly.
Best inside centre.
Not the one that was most famously played for Toulon with Johnny Wilkinson.
I was going to say Giteau, but I can't imagine he would be your.
No, Giteau is my second best inside centre of all time. Okay. He's amazing.
Go on, tell me. Otherwise, I'm
Marnonu.
How he didn't play? Was he?
I think he was there for a bit. He was there when they were shit.
Okay.
But he is coaching. He's doing a few days coaching down at Toulon, which
that's very cool.
Does
he live in France still? Does he?
I thought he was in the States. I'm sure Montpellier who they've got this weekend, will be delighted by the prospect of Leicester Ganuku having been given some tips by Marnonu
under the watchful eye.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't need tips of Marnonu, it's probably Leicester Ganuku. Or if anyone could be more dangerous in the top 14 under the tutelage of Marnonu, it's probably him. That's a terrifying prospect.
Yeah, he was playing you're right about America. He was playing very recently still, wasn't he? For like the San Diego
Legion or whatever.
Legion, that was it.
I think he is still playing.
Very cool. All right, a full schedule lined up for the weekend. Top 14 Pro de National. It'll all be on the cards. Rob,
what a lovely way to spend the Valentine's weekend, watching French rugby back to back.
The perfect gift for the love.
With my true love, Pro de Deux. The Pro de Deux live scores on Friday night.
Pro de Deux on Eurosport live text. Nothing quite says romantic evening in. If you want to follow some hot takes, some poor takes, some random thoughts on each of those competitions on social media, where can you follow us, Rob?
We are at Rosbif Rugby on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's it, isn't it?
Snapchat. We're not on Snapchat.
That could be quite dark.
That would be. Yeah, I don't know. People don't really use that these days, do they? Or certainly at the age of about 15.
Do. Yeah.
Alrighty, but yeah, you can follow us there. In the meantime, enjoy your weeks, enjoy your Valentine's days, enjoy your Valentine's weekend of French rugby. I've been Richard. That's been Rob. We've been the Rosbif Rugby Podcast. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.